Hello Kerbal and welcome to Mind the Man and More, Part 14, Asteroid Impact Imminent. Yes, there's an asteroid on its way, and if we don't stop it, it's going to impact Kerbin, causing an extinction level event. Because after all, this is a Class E asteroid. But while we're waiting for that, there's another asteroid that's going to pass by Kerbin, luckily at a safe distance. Now that one's a smaller asteroid, so I think I'll leave that one as a base. Because what I'm going to do is capture this asteroid, we're going to get into orbit around Kerbin and use it as a base. But first off, we have to save Kerbin. And that's what these demigod pusher engines are going to be doing. They're the engines that are going to be pushing the asteroid's trajectory to a safe distance or safe position. Okay, so let's fast forward time. In the last episode, we did launch these pusher engines up, but we launched it at an equator orbit, like everything else orbiting here, but we have to launch this at an inclination. And when you're launching something at an inclination, you can only launch it at 2 points in the orbit where that inclination intersects. And you saw me just now lining that inclination up. And you've seen this launch before in the last episode, so I'm going to fast forward. Now there's a problem with these demigod pusher engines. Getting up into orbit, you have to use the engine themselves. However, the fuel does not get pumped around correctly. And you can see this point. We're doing a flip. We're not quite in orbit yet. We're still in space, luckily. But I do a full flip. I think I shut down or disable gimbling of the rear engine to try to stop the wobble. So we haven't got all the engines at the front and all the engines at the back trying to correct. And as you can see, one of the large engines have disabled. It's run out of fuel. So we transfer fuel to try and get it running. We get ourselves into orbit. Okay, to join that though, what we have to do is re-engineer this rocket. This is actually the front of the vessel. This is going to be the part that captures the asteroid. It's going to hold the Kerbals that can engineer. The last time I made this, I didn't put parachutes on it or a re-entry heating shield. So that's what we've added here. And also, I'm going to make this a bit different. I thought I'd make this look a bit better than the 4 engines sticking out. So I'm going to put 4 engines on the outer side of it. And also, I'm going to decorate it up a bit. The top of the engines, I didn't like the look of them. So I put these beams at the top. Lined them up. And the sides, that doesn't look too bad, but still we have to put something by here. No, it's a bit too long to put there. There's no way that'll work. So we'll skip that and we'll use the short beam, use the end of it, put it into place. Now that looks cool. I'm happy with that. Just put it in a bit. Yeah, I like that. It's like a directive hanger, you could say, if it wants a function. It's something for the Kerbals to hook onto. Or reinforcement struts. Not that they are. Oh yes, and we've also added the Kerbal attachment system with the Kerbal inventory containers. And what I'm going to put in this one is struts. Now I've worked out how to attach the struts. Before I thought you had to attach the normal struts in the game, one end to one end, but really you need the orange struts connectors, and you need to attach them to the points you want the strut, and then you can link to either end, but you need 2 of them. But there I've got enough for 4. If I realized this as I was loading it up, I would have put all the orange struts into there. And also we're going to be adding RCS thrusters. Now these are going to go on the asteroid themselves. Hopefully this will work. From my experience, when you attach to the asteroid, it becomes part of the ship. So when you attach the RCS thrusters, they should work for controlling the asteroid. And that's just to maneuver into place. Yeah, I was thinking by here of adding the radiothermal generators, but I decided to go with a Gigantor solar panels instead and some batteries, because that should provide enough energy for our trip. The large engines on the demigod pusher should provide us with enough electricity generation while we're attached to the asteroid. Now, the problem I'm thinking of is that the asteroid will eclipse the solar panels because it's a large asteroid and cause energy to, not for them to be blocked from the sun so you don't generate electricity. But however, I don't think we need to worry about that. Oh yes, and I almost forgot the RCS for the ship itself, because we need them at least, in the very least, to dock. Okay, now that's set up, we can change out that measly engine there and use the skipper. That's to make sure we get up into orbit. Although, in hindsight, I wish I put a docking port on that, because we could use the fuel in that to refuel the demigod pusher engines. So anyway, we're using the 180 ton launcher. Just redraw the fairing. And we can launch this sucker. Or asteroid hitter? Smasher? I said asteroid smasher. Anyway, let's go launch this up. Now, someone said in the comments, I did ask before, do you want to watch a full launch? And he said, yes, I want to watch a full lunch. So here you are, full course meal from launch. And let's fast forward the video because it does take quite a while. Okay, while launching this, I was trying to make sure that inclination, we've targeted the demigod pusher engines, because we're going to have to rendezvous with that, dock with it, and I'm trying to make sure I get the right inclination. Now, the problem is, we have to reduce our orbit. Let me put it this way. The planet is rotating under us, so it's making us go sideways, so we have to kill that rotation, and because we don't need it. If we go into an equatorial orbit, you're best to go east, was it? No, the east. No, launch west. No, launch east, yes, correct. Launch east, that is right. And we don't want to. We want to go northwest. Yes, I got my angles right. However, we still have that slight angle from the rotation of the planet, which I think is 172 meters per second, 140. I can't remember off the top of my head, to tell you the truth. But trying to set up this orbit. Oh, sorry, we're going south east. Yes, that's where the confusion was. I thought we were going northeast, northwest. But in fact, we're going southeast because of the nav ball. The north on the nav ball is to the south when you look at it from launch. And that confuses the hell out of me sometimes. Anyway, once that's set up, I try to do the orbit burn quickly by here because we're going to lose our altitude very quickly. But I'm also trying to do the inclination burn here, as you can see, to reduce the inclination so that we'll get a close intercept with the demigod pusher engines. And that's quite useful. When you're doing inclination burns and you're getting up into orbit at the same time, do it at the same time as your burns, because that reduces, it's almost like free inclination burn. Not 100% free, I'd say, but you use less energy doing an inclination burn with a normal burn of any kind. Okay, so now we've got this up into orbit. We've got a lot of fuel in here, and I wish at this point I'd put a docking port on those engines, that we could have docked it straight onto the demigod pusher engines and refueled it. But that was not meant to be, so we have to decouple it, deorbit it, and there it goes off into its fiery death. Let's have a look at it. Let's enable the space trash view, and you can see I've got a lot of space junk in on the map. Yes, if you have space trash in your game, do not worry too much about it. In real life, we've got a lot of it, and there's a lot out there that we have to worry about. That's because we got over 50 years worth of space trash up there. And in Kerbal Space Program, I don't think you'd ever get that much of it unless you've done smashing your space satellites and rockets and spaceships to bits. You don't have to worry Oh yes, separating that rocket reduced our intercept, because I'd done the intercept burn off camera. So I thrusting it in the opposite direction. We separate, from what I remember our intercept burn was. And hey presto, we've got an intercept. Yes, I'd advise you, if you're not used to this, create a maneuver node to get your intercept. You can see we're still at an inclination, so I was lucky I had that intercept. Okay, so a quick fast forward to this. Where is it? Ah, there they are. Now for burning a retrograde to our target. As usual, you have to clear your speed with the other spacecraft or object to make sure you go into the same orbit. Once you've killed your speed, all it needs to do is thrust towards your body or ship or whatever. Now most of you probably have seen my tutorial about docking, rendezvous and docking. Not a very easy task when you first start off with, but once you do get used to it, it becomes so easy, and in fact it becomes quite fun. Although I have to say the docking part can sometimes be slow, especially if you've got a large craft. And then your frame rates drop to about 12 frames per second. Yes, that's what I have to deal with sometimes. Especially now we're coming into the loading space of the demigod pusher engines. Our frame rates drop down to, or is it 15? I think it starts off. As soon as we get closer, it goes down to about 12. This is fast forward video because you don't want to sit through this. If I ever do a live stream, I'd have to build small rockets. However, Unity 5.2, one squad have adapted the game fully for that and is past the QA testing. Yes, multi-core threaded processing for physics. Because it's not the graphics of the game which slow the game down. Because it's quite easy for this. I've played games with higher graphics than this. So it's the physics of the game. Every part on those ships, the physics has been calculated for. It's even worse when you're in the atmosphere, where it has to figure out the atmosphere. Right, by here, if you got two ships, point the docking ports at each other. This makes docking a lot easier. It's much different for a space station because you can't really maneuver a space station. But this makes things so much easier. With a space station, if you do have to dock, try to line everything up to a north-south position. So when it's orbiting, the north-south docking ports don't change position. Now this docking is going to take a bit of time, so what I could do is talk about why there's asteroids in the game. Well, in fact, none other than NASA approached Squad and asked them if they wanted to put something in their game and be not endorsed, but a sort of like affiliation with NASA, because they're both similar. Each agency has to grapple with the physics, like in the game and in real life. So NASA they added the asteroids to the game because NASA are going to be going and capturing an asteroid and bringing it in orbit around the moon, or in the same orbit as the moon. I can't remember which, but that's what's going to happen. In fact, I don't think NASA are going to get in big asteroid like we are. They're not going to be docking, not going to capture it. What they are going to do is they're going to land perhaps on a large asteroid, pick up a big huge boulder, probably, I'm not sure how big, but a large boulder, and then they're going to use that. They're going to capture it with a space probe. They're going to bring it into orbit around there. Then they're going to send people on the Orion spacecraft, which they've tested already. And then they're going to study it. And this is all part of NASA's big plan, because eventually NASA are going to be sending people to Mars. Now, they've already started this with the Curiosity rover, and what they've done is they used the sensor data when it was traveling towards Mars to find out the space environment that the astronauts would encounter on their way to Mars. And they found there was quite a lot of radiation, in fact so much that they're not sure if an asteroid could survive. But what they can do, now that they know this, is give extra radiation shielding. But it doesn't stop there. Because what NASA have done, they've sent an astronaut on the International Space Station, and he's going to be living up on the International Space Station for 1 entire year to study the effects on the human body. But he has a twin brother, which is on Earth, and they can study the effects, the changes in the physiology between the two. So they know exactly, because they're identical twins, they know exactly what changes have occurred. And also they're engineering their SLS, Space Launch System. And this is going to be larger than the rockets that they used to send the Apollo astronauts to the moon. And that's going to be launching the Orion spacecraft and perhaps others up into orbit so they could intersect that asteroid. Well, once the probe has taken it off the surface of the asteroid and brought it into orbit, either around the moon or a similar orbit to the moon. I can't remember which. I don't think they'll bring it into orbit around Kerbin like we're going to be doing with this asteroid. And as I said, they're not going to be bringing that large asteroid to impact. That's going to impact Kerbin here. Nothing like that. So you don't have to worry. But we have to worry because now we're ready to, intersect this asteroid. So let's get on with it. And here it is, the asteroid. And it's going to be approaching within 100 days. So fast forward in time, it's going to intersect Kerbin or enter the sphere of influence. And from there on, we have to go and intercept it. Now, I've used the alarm clock to stop a bit further before there, because what we have to do is add a maneuver by here, or switch to the spaceship that we're going to be controlling first, because I switched to another probe, so we could do a full time accelerate. Otherwise, it would have been years until we got there. Let's target the asteroid. And here we go. Create a maneuver on the opposite end of where the asteroid is going to come into, because as most of you should know, once you create a maneuver, once you thrust in prograde, it increases on the other end of the orbit, the height. Now, a little tip here, put the apoapsis on the trajectory of the asteroid incoming to Kerbin, and just increase until we get an intercept. Now, this is quite time consuming because it may take a long time for it to come. I have to press the plus-minus orbit. With this, I can work out how many days this orbit of the asteroid is going to take, from where it's entered the sphere of influence at Kerbin and when it leaves the sphere of influence. Obviously, it's not going to leave the sphere of influence because it's going to impact Kerbin itself. But using that data, I can work out how long it's going to take within days. However, the orbit, I have to plus and minus orbits as well as try to get our apoapsis up into the same trajectory to make sure we get our intercepting. See here, I'm fiddling with it. Takes a bit of time, but we do eventually come up with a 500. No, not by here. Come on. Okay, about a 500 kilometer intercept. Now, I'm not going to fiddle with that anymore. I should have used precise node, but the variations are staggering. When you just rotate your ship with RCS, that changes your trajectory quite a bit, especially at those distances. So it's best to burn this roughly. Go through time accelerate by here. Burn it roughly, or as best you can, as close as you can would be the best. And then you do corrections either with the RCS or small burns on your way. Now, there is a problem that we could counter with this, in the fact that closest approach markers sometimes mess up. Now, we've got a guaranteed close approach up there as long as we burn this correctly. So let's get this burning. Okay, everything's lined up. We're about ready. Let's burn rubber. Now I have to mention that I found a problem with these demigod pusher engines. Now if you look in the bottom left of the engines, the fuel, you can see they're all uneven. And that's because the fuel isn't being pumped around correctly. You can see one of the tanks is starting to be burnt, and that has moved the mass about. And we don't lose control by here, but we will eventually lose control at some point. So I have to work that out. The funny thing is, all those engines are all the tanks are connected the same all around it. They're all feeding from the center tank to the outer tanks, and then down to the bottom tanks of those engines. So I have no idea why they're not working. It's just I'll have to engineer them so they're not using the same fuel tanks as the others. Anyway, let's get our intersect, because we have an asteroid to capture, and the asteroid has just entered the sphere of influence of Kerbin. Now we have to work out how to intersect it. And you see, everything's going slow by here. So a quick fast forward in the video, trying to burn in the correct trajectory. I'd find out that the fuel is going really low in one of the tanks. And here is where things go horribly wrong. Okay, I'm checking the tanks. And by here, I think let's shut these down because it's not working. And something happens when the engine is shut off. Why? We've got fuel in there. Why is it shut down? I don't know. It's because you stopped the fuel flow, you silly Kerbal nut. You call yourself an engineer? Yeah, by here I was perplexed. I couldn't work it out. So I shut down the other engines. That works. Haha, I redeemed myself. Not really. But anyway, let's go thrusting again. Now I'm trying to cancel our trajectory with the target there. And what I've decided here, we'll leave the demigod pusher engines behind. So the part that's going to capture the asteroid is on the front of the ship, and it's going to be going on its own. Now hopefully it'll have enough fuel, it'll be good enough to do its job. I'm not sure how much Delta V though that will have left after. Okay, so engines activated, thrust away. Beautiful. Okay, so by here, we're roughly going at the same speed as the asteroid. It seems to be an intersect, but that's outside the orbit of Kerbin. So what I'm going to do here is thrust directly towards the asteroid. Now, normally this wouldn't work when you're in orbit around Kerbin. That's because you're changing positions all the time when you're orbiting around. That's the way orbital mechanics work. So what you want to do by here, because we're on a straight trajectory, you should be able to thrust directly for the asteroid. Both of us aren't traveling relatively fast. As long as you have fast enough speed for your approach to the asteroid, you should be fine. You can see, yes, we're getting close. We haven't got the close approach markers, and that's what I meant by they seem to mess up. But yeah, we seem to be heading for it, and in fact, we're coming into range. So let's use the computer. Go prograde. Yes, I'm using the computer by here. And the reason for that is I want to make sure our trajectory stay in, so we don't waste too much fuel. We're going to have to save every drop of fuel to try to not intersect it, but try to change its trajectory. Because it's a large asteroid. Pop! It just pops into view by there. I love that. Assume that's because there's a range for when the graphics loading, and there's a range for when the physics of the object's loading. So no big deal here. Okay, all we're doing now is killing our velocity, try to match our velocity with our target. And once we've done that, then we can go intersect it. And we're here. This is the asteroid. This is the extinction level event asteroid. and it looks huge. So now we arm your claw. The claw is going to grab the asteroid. So this is going to be like the arcade machines. All you have to do is head towards it. Hopefully the claw has enough grip on it to grip the asteroid. And hopefully we can redirect it. Now the idea I've got here is that we're not going to stop it from intersecting Kerbin. What we're going to do is have it enter the atmosphere of Kerbin. Just enough to lower its speed so it doesn't escape Kerbin orbit. Now that's going to be a bit tricky. That's going to have to be a bit more working out for me, because this is a large asteroid. It has a high weight, and when you're working out delta V and everything, you have to include the weight into the equation. And because this has a high weight, I'm not sure how far in the atmosphere we have to go to to reduce its orbit to stay in a stable orbit around Kerbin. I have to make sure things like it doesn't intersect the man or min-mass. That'll throw it either back out into orbit or back into Kerbin. So things to work out in the future. Okay, we're coming in close. I'm trying to target the center of this. In fact, we've got a shadow. In fact, this asteroid is not as big as I thought. Although, look at that. That is huge. That is larger. That's bigger than the demigod pressure engines. Or it'll at least still be big enough to build a base. Now, what you want to do is target the center mass of the asteroid. Then you want to free pivot of the claw. And then use the RCS and have a look at the nav ball. You want to get the center of the nav ball on the center of mass that we've targeted of the asteroid. And that's so you're pushing the center of mass of the asteroid and hopefully get it in the correct trajectory. Now, this is where we're going to leave this episode off because, well, this has gone on long enough. Find out in the next episode if we save Kerbin. Trust me, I'm an engineer.